They said Daniel was the kind of man every mother prayed her daughter would marry, charming, polite, and ambitious, the perfect match for my only child, Zara. When he entered our lives, he did so with the smooth confidence of someone who knew exactly how to win hearts. I watched him laugh with Zara, help her wash the dishes, and pull out her chair at dinner. Every gesture seemed rehearsed, but I told myself I was being paranoid. After all, who doesn't want their child to be loved completely? For years, they built a life that looked beautiful from the outside. Daniel's business flourished, Zara smiled in family photographs, and I, content in my quiet widowhood, spent most evenings in their home. I never missed a Sunday dinner. I helped raise their daughter, little Emma, who had Daniel's eyes but, thankfully, Zara's warmth. It was a peaceful life, or so I thought. There were small moments that should have warned me. The way Daniel's smile froze when the topic of money arose, how Zara's laughter dimmed after his jokes about her not needing to work. Once I caught him staring at me too long, not with affection, but calculation. Still, I ignored it. Love, I told myself, sometimes comes wrapped in pride. Then, one spring afternoon, Daniel suggested we take a family trip to the seaside cliffs. "It'll be good for you, Mom," he said, using that honeyed tone he saved for when he wanted something. "Fresh air, ocean view. You deserve a little adventure." Zara smiled, holding Emma's hand, and my heart melted. I agreed, never suspecting that adventure would almost be my grave. The day was perfect. The sky was a clean blue, the sea roared below us, and laughter carried over the wind. We took photos, picnicked, and for a while, I believed life could still be gentle. Then Daniel asked me to walk a bit further for a better view. I remember the wind whipping my scarf, the sharp smell of salt, and his hand resting lightly on my back. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said softly. Before I could answer, I felt a shove, quick, deliberate, and strong. The world tilted, I heard my daughter scream, saw the sky spin, and then, nothing but air and pain, I fell. I hit rock, the world went black. When I opened my eyes again, I was broken, bleeding, and alive. Somewhere above, I heard voices fading, Daniel's panicked shouting, Zara crying my name. And as darkness pulled me under once more, one truth burned into my mind. My son-in-law had just tried to kill me. When I woke up, the world was a blur of white walls, antiseptic smell, and distant beeping. My body was wrapped in pain, every breath a reminder that I should have been dead. The nurse told me I'd been found by a hiker 2 days after the fall, unconscious but alive. A miracle, she called it. I didn't feel like one. I felt like a ghost, one who had seen her murderer smile. They listed my injuries like a grocery receipt: fractured ribs, broken arm, concussion, internal bruising. But none of that hurt as much as the betrayal. Daniel had looked me in the eye before he pushed me. His calmness wasn't rage, it was calculation, and I knew then that he hadn't acted on impulse, he'd planned it. When the police came, I told them the truth. They nodded sympathetically, wrote notes, and promised to investigate. But soon after, Zara called the station crying, heartbroken, and utterly convinced it was an accident. "He tried to save her," she said. "He blames himself. The case was closed before it began. I was discharged a week later, my statement buried beneath paperwork and disbelief." I couldn't go home. Daniel thought I was dead, and I wanted it to stay that way. So I found a small rental cottage 2 towns over, a quiet place near the woods where no one asked questions. I changed my name on paper, learned to walk again, and watched the world rebuild itself without me. Every night I scrolled through social media, hungry for proof of their lives. Zara posted tributes to me for a while. Bold photos, tearful captions. Daniel stood beside her in every picture, the grieving son-in-law, comforting widow and child with just the right balance of sorrow and strength. People praised him for his kindness. They called him a pillar, 3 months later, they sold my house. 6 months after that, Daniel's company expanded, and Zara began wearing designer dresses I knew she couldn't afford before. Slowly, the truth crystallized. He hadn't just wanted me gone. He wanted what I had. My property, my savings, the inheritance I'd set aside for Zara and Emma. But karma has a quiet way of waiting for its cue. I wasn't done, not yet. As I healed, I made plans. I started collecting things, old receipts, business records, emails I'd saved on a forgotten drive. Every memory became a weapon. Every pain became purpose. He thought he'd silenced me forever. He didn't realize he'd only awakened the part of me that no longer feared losing anything. Because when you've already fallen off a cliff and lived, there's nothing left to be afraid of, only justice left to take back. Revenge didn't come roaring. It crept in quietly, like mist curling around the edges of dawn. I spent a year healing physically, yes, but mostly learning patience, the kind of patience only a betrayed woman can master. Daniel had stolen everything I owned and almost my life. So I decided I'd take everything he valued slowly, beautifully, and without warning. My first step was information. I knew Daniel's company, D&M Holdings, ran on dirty money. I'd heard whispers of illegal contracts back when I was family. So I contacted an old friend of my late husband, Farid, a retired accountant with more curiosity than caution. Posing as a journalist, I asked him to verify a rumor about Daniel's finances. Within weeks, he sent me files, falsified invoices, bribes, and stolen assets. The man who pushed me off a cliff was drowning in secrets. Next came whispers. I created a new online identity, a friend of Zara. From that account, I began feeding small, true stories to local reporters. A failed charity payment here, an unpaid supplier there. Just enough to make people wonder if Daniel was as honest as he seemed. Soon, murmurs turned into headlines. Investors began to pull out quietly. And Daniel, who had built his reputation on confidence, began to sweat in public. But I wanted more than financial ruin. I wanted him to feel the same confusion, the same fear of losing everything familiar. So I began to haunt him. I sent letters to his office unsigned, typed each one containing fragments of our last conversation on the cliff. Beautiful, isn't it? One note read, another, you didn't check if I stopped breathing. He started losing sleep. Zara posted photos where his eyes looked hollow, his smile strained. I could see it, the paranoia beginning to eat through his perfect mask. Then came my most delicate move. I sent Zara an anonymous envelope filled with bank statements showing that Daniel had transferred my estate into his company the week I died. No threats, no accusations, just the truth. I knew my daughter's heart. Once she doubted him, that seed would bloom into a forest of questions. Daniel's life began to crumble piece by piece. His investors fled, his partners questioned him, and his wife. The woman he'd fooled so easily started to look at him differently. Every tear Zara shed was a mix of betrayal and awakening. I didn't want to destroy her, I wanted to free her. And as I watched the man who'd once smiled before pushing me now pacing his office, haunted by shadows only he could see, I realized something powerful. Revenge didn't need violence. It only needed truth delivered at the right moment. The night Zara found out everything, a storm tore through the city. I watched from the window of my small cottage, the rain streaking down like the tears I had already cried months before. I knew what was happening in their home. Truth had finally crashed through the walls Daniel built with lies. She called him out. The documents I'd sent had spoken louder than any accusation. I imagined the scene vividly, Zara clutching the papers with trembling hands, Daniel's voice rising and falling between denial and desperation. The mask he'd worn for years was cracking, and this time charm couldn't patch it. For once, the manipulator was trapped in his own web. By morning, Zara appeared at my door. Her eyes were swollen, her hair drenched, but her face held a new kind of strength, the kind that comes from surviving heartbreak. She didn't ask if I was alive, she already knew. She had seen the truth in the evidence, the voice messages I'd planted, and the hidden bank accounts that bore her husband's name and mine. When I opened the door, she froze. For a moment, the world stopped moving. Then she whispered, "Mom," as if saying it too loudly might shatter the fragile reality she'd just entered. We cried without words. The sound of the storm faded behind the soft, trembling rhythm of forgiveness. I told her everything. The fall, the hospital, the silence, the plan. I expected anger. Instead, she took my hand and said, "You didn't destroy him, Mom. He destroyed himself." In the weeks that followed, the story spread like wildfire. Reporters dug deeper into Daniel's business. His company collapsed under the weight of fraud charges and unpaid debts. The police reopened my accident case, and soon Daniel was facing more than just bankruptcy. He was facing justice. When the trial began, I sat quietly in the back of the courtroom. Daniel's eyes met mine only once. He looked smaller somehow, as if the arrogance had been carved right out of him. I didn't smile. Revenge wasn't about satisfaction anymore. It was about closure. Zara moved back into my home with little Emma. We rebuilt our lives from ashes and honesty. Sometimes when the wind howled through the night, I'd remember the cliff, the moment he pushed me, and I'd realize something important. He'd tried to end my life, but in doing so, he had given it new meaning. Justice wasn't loud. It was quiet, steady, and beautifully complete. I didn't need to push him back from a cliff. Life had already done that for me.